During his visit to Venezuela, OPEC Secretary General Haitham Al-Ghais highlighted the country's importance as an oil producer in the midst of the global energy situation. Azerbaijani government proposes a humanitarian ceasefire to Armenia after recent clashes on the common border. And the United Nations Secretary General warned of possible multiple famines this year around the world, despite grain deals. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro Moros received the Secretary General of the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries, Haitham Al-Ghais, in the context of his official visit to the country. As part of the work agenda and on the occasion of the 62nd anniversary of the creation of the multilateral entity, Al-Ghais was received by the country's energy authorities. The purpose of the Secretary General's visit to Caracas is to sign agreements to stabilize oil prices in the world market. In this regard, the Venezuelan president proposed to the OPEC member countries to fix the price at $100, as well as the expansion of the multilateral organization. The Secretary General of the OPEC, Haitham Al-Ghais, highlighted the role of the organization in the world economy, while detailing the projections for global energy demand.
Is the basis of the world economy, not just for oil prices and oil market for the benefit of producers, but also for the benefit of consumers, through the stability of the whole system of world economy. Oil represents about 33% of the global energy mix today, and will continue to represent at least 30% of the global energy mix by 2045. This is important to keep in mind. As we talk about the importance of oil, if we add gas to the oil mix, this includes 60% of the global energy demand by 2045.
The Secretary General of the OPEC, Haitham Al-Ghais, also made reference to the large investment required by the world to sustain its growth until 2045, with the energy sector being essential in this process.
The world requires 12 trillion with a T US dollar of investment from now until 2045. $12 trillion. This is a phenomenal amount of money, and the world cannot sustain this economic growth without energy. Oil plays a fundamental role in this energy mix. Venezuela plays a fundamental role in supplying the world with this requirement of oil.
In Colombia, the president of the Senate's Economic Commission, Gustavo Bolívar, referred to the approval of the budget to formalize the agrarian reform in the country.
With this, President Petro wants to carry out an agrarian reform, which has never been done in Colombia, and it is by buying land. Look at the way it is. They accused us that we were coming to expropriate the Colombians, to take away their things, and that was never said in the campaign. However, the story was growing, and today we're giving up a slap in the face of those liars who said that we were coming to expropriate. No, we allocated 2 additional billions for land purchase. That is the agrarian reform that means delivering 3 million hectares of land to the dispossessed peasants of Colombia today. Will be done by buying the land from the people who do not have it producing today.
On Wednesday, the South American Defense Conference, SouthDEC 2022, was inaugurated in Ecuador's capital, where the U.S. delegation meets with multiple delegates from South America. General Laura Richardson, commander of the U.S. Southern Command, and the president of Ecuador, Guillermo Lasso, take part in the conference, where for 3 days the delegation will be dealing with drug trafficking, illegal mining and fishing, organized crime, and cyber defense. Ecuador is waging a war against drug traffickers, who vie for power in the streets and prisons, unleashing a crime wave. The country sees an annual record of 210 tons of drugs in 2021, while the murder rate was 14 per 100,000 people, almost double that of 2020. In Argentina, justice ordered the arrest of Nicolás Carrizo, the fourth person in custody in the case of the assassination attempt against Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. The young man, alleged leader of the group known as Los Copitos, joins the already arrested Fernando Sebag Montiel, Brenda Uliarte, and Agustina Diaz. According to evidence collected so far, investigators believe that the men, together with Sebag and Uliarte, participated in the intelligence work in the vicinity of the vice president's home. Suriname's President Shan Toki asked the International Monetary Fund for more flexibility in the timetable of reforms committed to the organization.
Timeline and giving the targets and the deadline, it is very tightened, which is having a strong impact on the community. We need some more relaxation and more flexibility in the timeline. The income of the oil and gas are not included in this timeline. So if we can include the income of the oil and gas after 2025, then we'll have more relax and flexibility over here. We can do more for the community. And that is the discussion what we want. And this week, I'll have a meeting with the director of IMF in Washington.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Former President Lula Silva met with 900 solidarity economic cooperatives in Sao Paulo and promised strengthening policies for the sector as a way out of the economic crisis in the country. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemus with the story.
Before the presidential elections, Lula da Silva met with a multitude of workers from all over Brazil, organized in cooperatives to resist the impact of the ultra-liberal policies of Bolsonaro and his economy minister Paulo Guedes. The ex-president promised policies for the sector at the finance ministry.
Hay cooperativas de 50 personas, de 300 personas, de 500
There are cooperatives of 50 people, 300 people, or 500 people, of all kinds, but they are only successful when they start from the bottom up, and that's what the state has to do. The state should provide people with the possibility, the opportunity to create, to organize themselves and establish their own economy.
La oportunidad de crear, de organizarse y establecer su propia economía.
For social leaders, the way out of the economic crisis lies in reindustrialization and in the support to family farming.
What is the way to reindustrialize the country and have a food agriculture? Only through cooperation, through cooperativism. Because otherwise a new bourgeoisie will come back. The state alone with its state enterprise can no longer meet the urgency of the problems we have. Then cooperativism, as Lula said, is a way to mobilize other people so that they get to work and produce the goods that society needs.
In a country with 33 million people going hungry and more than half of the population suffering from food insecurity, communities impacted by the economic crisis self-organize their economies in search of solutions.
When the national superstructures are no longer accountable, when the state does not provide the necessary answers to the population, the communities create their own self-management mechanism. This is normally a very fair period for the solidarity economy. Because the principle that rules solidarity economy is that the value of one does lies in work, not in capital. So when there are hands that are organized collectively, there is a multiplication of capacities, and it is possible to satisfy great needs.
The first round of the presidential elections is almost 2 weeks away, but for the cooperatives, the task does not end on October the 2nd or the 30th. If the wish of Lula's return to the presidency comes true, the economy of a country that has been going through a barrage of ultra-liberal policies since 2016 will have to be restructured.
Ignacio Lemus y Julia Nassif para TeleSUR.
Now we move on to other topics. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen declares that the successive waves of EU sanctions against Russia are here to stay. The EU also plans a deep and comprehensive reform of the electricity market to cope with an energy crisis sparked by the conflict. The measures included cap on electricity producers' profits that will raise 140 billion euros and cushion consumers from high prices. Other steps involve rationing energy, temporary state aid, and decoupling the prices of gas and electricity. Ursula von der Leyen also announced the creation of a new bank designed to spur investment of up to 3 billion euros in hydrogen as a green alternative to fossil fuels. The measures were in response to soaring energy costs as Europe painfully unhitches its decades-long dependency on Russian fossil fuels. On Wednesday, Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson, leader of the Social Democrats, announces her resignation after an unprecedented right-wing and far-right bloc narrowly won on Sunday's elections.
Right-wing parties seem to have barely 50% of the votes in the election, and they have had an advantage of 1 or 2 mandates. It's a narrow majority, but it's a majority. So tomorrow I will hand in my resignation as Prime Minister, and the responsibility to continue the process will be taken over by the Speaker of the Parliament and the Parliament.
Moreover, out of the Swedish Parliament's 349 seats, the right-wing opposition was said to win 176, thanks in part to a surge by far-right Sweden Democrats, the SD, with over 99% of districts counted. Andersson said opinion polls show that there will be a close race in the election, and now she is concerned about the development in Sweden will be in the upcoming years. The party has so far won more than 20% of ballots, becoming the second biggest party behind outgoing Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson's Social Democrats, which have dominated Swedish politics since the 1930s. Queen Elizabeth II leaves Buckingham Palace for the final time, and her coffin begins its journey to Westminster Hall on this Wednesday. Thousands are mile-long route through London, looking on in respectful silence. The grand procession through the flag-lined heart of London represented the latest step in 11 days of intricately choreographed national mourning that will culminate with a funeral on Monday on the UK's longest reigning monarch. The coffin, followed by King Charles III, led the royal cortege in the military uniform of a field marshal. He was flanked to his left by his sons, Princes William and Harry, and 3 siblings with Princess Anne and Prince Edward. The funeral will take place in Westminster Abbey, next to Parliament, with hundreds of heads of state and government and guests, with the day declared a public holiday in Britain. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Azerbaijan proposed a humanitarian ceasefire to Armenia after the recent clashes on the common border. Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Dizankun Bayramov, during his meeting with Mikhail Sidorov, special representative of the Russian president, noted that the aggravation of the situation is not in the interests of Baku. Sidorov, who in turn expressed his hope that the clashes will cease. On the night of September 12th, 13th, Baku and Yerevan exchanged accusations of reciprocal attacks on the border. This recent violence is the worst escalation of hostilities between the two countries since the 2020 war and a ceasefire brokered by Russia that ended a large-scale fighting. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Nur-Sultan on Wednesday, kicking off his first trip abroad since the outbreak of the pandemic, with a stop in Kazakhstan ahead of a summit in Uzbekistan. This trip underlines the importance Beijing places on ties with Russia and Central Asia as the ruling Communist Party promotes its strategic ambitions amid tensions with Washington, Japan and India. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's government said the two leaders will discuss energy markets and global economic turmoil. On Thursday, Xi was due to fly to Samarkand in neighboring Uzbekistan for a summit of the 8-nation Shanghai Cooperation Organization led by China and Russia. Beijing and Moscow see the SCO as a counterweight to U.S. alliances in East Asia. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned of possible multiple famines this year despite grain deals. During a press conference, Guterres said that despite the Black Sea Grain Initiative and the agreement to bring Russian food and fertilizer to global markets, there is a real risk of multiple famines for several regions of the world. The Joint Coordination Center, located in Istanbul to monitor the implementation of the Grain Initiative, noted that since the signing of the agreement, only 28% of Ukrainian grain shipments went to low-income countries and 44% to high-income countries. In this regard, Russian President Vladimir Putin assured that he will discuss a revision of the agreement with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan during the next summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. On Wednesday, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, stated that the world is in a better position to end the COVID-19 pandemic.
Last week, the number of weekly reported deaths from COVID-19 was the lowest since March 2020. We have never been in a better position to end the pandemic. We're not there yet, but the end is in sight.
South Africa's drug regulator has reported 2 fatal cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS, a rare neurological disorder in people who received the anti-COVID vaccine from the U.S. laboratory Johnson & Johnson. The health authority, SAHPRA, reported the first death on August 4th. J&J stressed in a written response that very rare cases of neurological disorder, Guillain-Barré syndrome, have been reported after vaccination with Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine, most occurring within the first 14 days or 42 days after vaccination. However, SAHPRA noted in a statement that the effects reported in the vaccinated person corresponded to the definition of a GBS case, and no other probable cause of GBS were identified. South Africa, officially the African country most affected by the pandemic, has recorded more than 4 million cases of coronavirus and 102,129 fatalities. Now we move on to other topics. Health authorities in Pakistan reported Wednesday an outbreak of waterborne diseases in areas affected by recent floods in the country. Waterborne diseases have sickened thousands of people, including at least 90,000 cases of diarrhea. Citizens now fear for the transmission of dengue due to the high spread of mosquitoes due to stagnant water.
critically ill children who are suffering from dehydration and high fever because they are arriving here because of broken roads and floodwaters in the area. There is a lack of transportation. After all this, once these children arrive here, they are already in critical condition. We are also receiving dead children here. It was a big effort for us to stabilize the sick children. Yes, there are problems like gastro, diarrhea and dengue. We already started using dengue sprays all over the province and we are taking serious action against those who are not doing their duty. We transferred 2 million rupees to each district for the equipment to be used in the anti-dengue spray.
We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. And you can also follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.